You are listening to Frog Talk, presented by Black Ribbon.
Thank you so much for joining me on Frog Talk. Today, we are exploring the critical intersection of leadership development and organizational change. In a world where transformation is constant, leaders face unique challenges in guiding their teams while also navigating their own growth journeys. I have the great pleasure of speaking with Sean Barnes, a keynote speaker and executive coach with an extensive background in technology and operations. Sean brings a fascinating perspective, having experienced the journey from technical roles to executive leadership before transitioning to help other leaders find their path to meaningful impact. Welcome, Sean. How's it going?
It is going fantastic. I've been looking forward to this conversation, so let's dive in.
Me too, man. It's been a minute since we last spoke, so me too. I've been looking forward to this for a while. To begin, I really like to just try and connect the dots between where you were and where you are today. And when you and I spoke a couple times, you mentioned that you were quite the introvert at one point in your life, and I'm just very curious because I was also quite the introvert at one point in my life. What sort of that catalyst was that got you in on stage in front of many people and coaching? That's quite a jump.
Definitely a big jump, and it was not by design. Admittedly, it was something that I kind of fumbled into. And I spent the majority of my life as the extremely introverted IT nerd, focusing on technology. And in the IT realm, I came up through the infrastructure like data center design, architecture, things like that arena. And I spent most of my life knowing that I was meant for more. Fortunately, in the IT domain, you can accomplish big things from behind a keyboard. And after about 20 years of having IT roles, eventually finding myself in a director of IT role, I wasn't fulfilled anymore, and ultimately came to realize that I wasn't challenged. In the company that I was working for, the first 4 years that I was with them, we had 4 VPs of HR come and go. It was just this revolving door.
Wow. Yeah.
And when the fourth one departed, I had a conversation with our CEO, my boss, and said I would love an opportunity to lead HR. And as you might imagine, she was quite confused whenever I approached her, thought like she was looking around like somebody was punking her. And
I had the same feeling just now. That made me really confused.
And after a good bit of convincing, I think she finally had this mindset of, well, it can't be any worse than what we've had historically, so let's give you a shot. And I think part of the agreement was also I was able to mitigate the risk in her mind of basically saying, give me a year, let me see what we can do together. And after that year's up, I will interview and help you hire and find someone else that will be a better fit. Ultimately, they took a chance on me. And I quickly realized that I could no longer lead or build a team of HR professionals from behind a keyboard. So it forced my hand in learning skills around effective communication, around being able to walk into any room and have a conversation with anybody. So I started building those skills in person first. And then about 5 years ago, 4.5 years ago, a mentor of mine encouraged me to start a YouTube channel. And I thought, okay, have you lost your mind? Like, I can have a conversation, I can walk into a meeting room or a boardroom and talk with people, but putting myself out there to the world, like that is lunacy. And he basically said, okay, well, don't be a bitch about it. And I ended up doing it. Now, that also stretched me more than I could have possibly imagined. That was 4.5 years ago of starting my podcast, The Way of the Wolf. What I came to realize over the years of leading IT and HR, and then I got pretty good at building teams. So they said, hey, why don't you start leading safety? Why don't you start leading transportation? Why don't you start our project management office and so on? And over the years, I just got pretty good at interacting with people, at effectively communicating, at reading people and understanding how to inspire and influence them. And I finally got to a point where I felt I had accomplished everything I could at the company that I was working for and decided to go out on my own and start doing public speaking events. And it started off small, like sitting on panel discussions and little networking dinners and things like that. And it was interesting in that the more I did it, the better I got and the more I enjoyed it. And so now, like, that is my passion and purpose, is finding opportunities to give keynotes. A lot of what I talk about is building your personal brand, building high performing teams, things like that. And so in hindsight, I can't help but wonder, had I been more intentional about the going down this path, would I have been farther along? And I think the answer is yes. But I also believe everything unfolds exactly as it should. And so I really wouldn't change anything. My goal and objective now is to share the lessons that I've learned to hopefully inspire and influence others and help them to understand that they have so much more inside of them than they even realize. You just have to figure out how to unlock it.
I want to touch on a few things. Thank you for sharing that, first of all. Second, so these are sort of connected. You said, you think about, had you started earlier, had you had this realization earlier, might things be different now? Sure, probably, but you never really can tell. And two, how, so because of that realization, do you believe that because what I'm hearing is that your people skills were sort of inherent, but you didn't really know that they were there. Or at least you sort of knew they were there, but were afraid to unlock your abilities. So the question I have is, do you believe that your people skills were inherent to you, or was it something you learned to sort of harness, or was it more that you were taught and you were good at listening and realizing them, if that makes sense?
So I can definitely assure you my people skills were not inherent.
Okay.
I'm going to talk you through, as you were talking through that, I was kind of smirking a little bit. Now, the way my mind works, I am hyper analytical.
Yeah.
I have this insatiable thirst for knowledge and understanding. So obviously it made sense for me to build a career in IT because
Right.
technology, data, logic, process, trying to solve complex problems. Part of the issue whenever I stepped in to start leading human resources was how challenging it was to understand people's emotions, going from all data logic process into all emotion all the time.
Yeah.
And it damn near broke my brain. Now, I'm going to share something with you that you might chuckle at, but the turning point for me was when I started to recognize that people can be viewed as data sets. As an example, a member of my team named Jason years ago, I knew he had a military background. I knew he had children. I knew he was driven beyond belief, that he had skills in certain areas. I knew that he didn't get along with certain people. These are all data sets that I was able to overlay across Jason and Kristen and Sally and Mary and everybody on the team. So once you start understanding, okay, I know all of these pieces. I know the things that upset Jason. I know the things that excite Jason. Cool. I have all this information about Jason. Now, I also know the needs of the business. What are the gaps? What are the opportunities? What can we do to build the business? And then you say, Jason, you're great at all of these things. Business, you need all of these things. And then you create alignment. So that's how you build a high performing team, cultures of performance within an organization. So the analytical piece of it, that's the foundation of my people skills in terms of building, because you have to understand who you are communicating with, who you are working with first. To be able to effectively communicate to those people, you have to be able to adapt and communicate to them in a way that resonates. So this is where skill stacking comes into play. I know if I'm having a conversation with an introvert not to come out with spirit fingers and using my hand gestures because they're going to shut down. If I'm having a conversation with somebody who is very extroverted, then I can engage the hand gestures. I can raise my voice, pitch, and tonality, bring some more excitement to the conversation and pull them in. And so a lot of people will say, whenever I come off stage, you are such a captivating speaker. You must have been born with the gift of gab. And no, it's stacking skills. Whenever I first recognized how horrible I was at public speaking 8 years ago, I started going to Toastmasters. I hired a public speaking coach. I started going to workshops. And one thing that I did realize is I was pretty decent at using hand gestures. And so I leaned into that even more. I was not good at pitch and tonality, changes in the inflection of my voice. So I had to learn how to train that. Horrible at making eye contact. I had to develop those skills.
Yeah.
So when you have hand gestures, floor movement, pitch and tonality, eye contact, all of those things, you start stacking all of those skills, and all of a sudden, Sean's a captivating speaker. And you layer that over the fact that Sean knows how to read and understand people. Then you bring it all together and you have the people skills, you know how to communicate with them, you know how to inspire and influence them. So it's truly just the culmination of all of these skills that I kind of fumbled into over the past 8 years.
So in my opinion, like in my own experiences, my one of the greatest strengths that I've always possessed is my strength of observation, my skills of observation. Like very astute, very observant ever since I was a kid. And and you might be able to relate to that as an introvert, I wasn't just sort of in my own world. I was also very aware of what was happening around me. And now, as not even now, but as I became an adult, I started labeling it as a blessing and a curse because it was, yeah, you're nodding in agreement is reinforcing this because I was like, even today, I don't want to hear and see everything, but I can't help it. It's actually very difficult for me. Like I have a problem working in certain environments that have certain kinds of noise because I just can't concentrate on what I'm doing. Interestingly enough, if somewhere is like too noisy, like insanely noisy, I can sort of turn it into white noise. But if it's just noisy enough to where I can pick up on the specifics of what's happening to the point where I can zero in on what two people are talking about, in a crowded room. It's weird. It's like some comic book thing. and and over time, like that's actually what helped me become such a good designer because I was so observant and able to see pretty much most situations, if not all situations, from a 360 sort of viewpoint, to really understand what was going on. And to your point, it helped enhance my own intuition in understanding like where people were coming from and why they were acting a certain way because of circumstances within that in that situation. So um that's just like the way that you put that together was beautifully put. And I could like actually visualize those skills stacking on top of each other.
The thing that I'd like to interject there, the thing that's so important for me and what drives me to coach and speak is to help raise awareness of what we are talking about right now because far too many people just kind of fumble their way through lives. They're like, oh, I kind of enjoy this, but there's not enough intentionality. There's not enough focus on building those skills in an intentional way. And so whenever I have the podcast, which I don't monetize, it's just to like share the lessons that I've learned. I envision it in this way of I'm going to share these lessons so that people will see these as kind of road signs. As they're on the journey of life, here's this sign. I'm going to watch out for this. I want to watch out for this. And if they see something that they want to pursue, absolutely take that exit, but understand the road might get bumpy. Understand that if you engage an executive coach or have just a mentor in your life, they can probably tell you a different exit that will be much smoother and faster and get you there in that way. But not everybody's at that point, because you can't coach somebody that doesn't think they need to be coached. They have to have this realization in their own life and say, okay, I need some help with this. But most people, their ego doesn't let them think they need help. I mean, I still have coaches on occasion at certain seasons of my life. I had accomplished a lot of big things in corporate America, but starting a business, completely foreign. So I hired a business coach. Hey, help me figure out how to get this thing started. I'm great operating in big companies at scale, but help me figure out how to get this thing started. Hey, public speaking coach, I suck at public speaking. Help me out. But far too many people end up letting their ego suppress or prevent them from accomplishing the things that they really could accomplish if they set their mind to it.
Like meditation is like that. So many things are like that. I mean, so many things are like that. The things that are intangible, especially, are like that. I myself this year only really figured out what mindset shift really was about. Um, I'm an insanely disciplined person. So like whenever people are like, you just need a mindset shift. I'm like, man, I don't know what else I need to be doing. I'm so I'm so fucking disciplined that like I don't understand what else I need to like all I do is stay the course. I'm like, no matter if the world is burning down around me or not, I get up at 4:30. I still do my workout. I still go to work. I still do this. I still do that. What else am I supposed to be doing? And I had this um, big epiphany at the beginning of the year where I was speaking to somebody and I was actually complaining about how the give and take, right? Like or the give and get. I'm like, what is this flow of energy everyone keeps talking about? Like, I don't get it. What is that? I keep giving and I keep giving and giving and giving and I'm not getting anything back. Like, I don't understand. I'm doing all these favors and doing work for free and so on. And like, I'm still kind of stuck in this place and nothing's really happening. And I feel like I'm depleted and so on. Um, and she goes, okay, well, the universe is interesting in its mysticism. You think of it this way, like the universe sees you doing all this work for free and sees that maybe you enjoy it, so it's going, hey, look at this guy, he loves doing free work, send him more free work. So I was just like, and then I go, oh my god, I am getting what I'm giving. And that was kind of an epiphany moment for me where I realized what that was and instantly started making these shifts. And the same thing is, like I was saying, what you said with meditation. I know people who are like, they're non-believers. And so it just doesn't work for them. And I myself had a period where I didn't believe in meditation. I just didn't get it. And then there came a time where I absolutely had no other choice because I was in physical distress when I was doing my masters for like a year and a half. I was itching incessantly and like I couldn't figure out doctors, this and that. Nothing was doing anything. So I started meditating because I was like, this is my reality now. I need to sort of figure this out. And that seemed to have been the only thing that helped me, actually. And it was because I had to. I just opened my mind to it. Um, so in your experience with coaching, for example, when you're dealing with leaders who, I mean, better question, are you ever dealing with leaders who sort of came from where you came from, or came through the ranks based on technical expertise, but then struggle with these transitions into more people focused roles and leadership that requires an understanding of how people behave, of being more open, more intuitive, more understanding, and less rigid? How do you deal with them when they have to navigate those kinds of shifts?
One of the things that I found so interesting about working with executives, and to give you kind of a sense as director, VP, and even C-level executives, is that seemingly the IT executives tend to struggle with people skills. That's not shocking. The HR executives tend to struggle with data structure process. Again, not shocking, because whenever you look at their behavioral traits, there is a reason they found themselves in the career path or trajectory that they are in. They had an inclination to lean into it. Now, another thing that I've seen is more HR executives than I can count actually are the toxic person in the organization. They don't recognize it. So a lot of times these executives, even senior executives, they woefully lack self-awareness. And as they ascend in the executive ranks, their ego just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and they tune everybody out. Any feedback they receive, they seemingly have this mindset of no, 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 I'm the executive. I know what's best, clearly, because I have the title. So ego seems to be one of the biggest challenges that many executives struggle with. Now, you can break down an ego, but the first thing you need to do is connect with this leader. You have to showcase that you know what you're talking about. You have to showcase that you know what they are experiencing, what their pain points are. And when you are able to build trust, you can then have this conversation and say, Sally, what are your thoughts on this? Like, what's going on here? Let Sally get it off her chest and vent. Oh, well, Jacob's a problem, Jason's a problem, Mike's a problem. Like, just go down the list. Say, wow, man, there's a theme. Is there anybody else that could be a problem? Do you think the entire world is the problem, or is there something that maybe you might be unintentionally doing that could be contributing to that? And so you force them to actually think. And then you encourage them to have a conversation. You say, Jacob's the problem. Have you sat down and said, Jacob, I'm struggling with this? Like, am I seeing this wrong? And so a lot of times it really just comes down to helping people understand what their blind spots are. But you have to build trust, because if they don't trust you, they're just going to tune you out and ignore you. And I've been coaching probably 6 years. I started doing it on the side whenever I was still employed. I wasn't charging anybody. I was just trying to get the reps in. And
Yeah.
earlier you mentioned doing work for free. I think that's part of the process, because
Hmm.
you need to get the reps in to be proficient and good at what you do. And when you start getting good enough, then you start getting new people to come in the door. Here's my rates. Here's my
Hmm.
rates. And when you start getting more paying customers, then it's, I can't do freebies anymore, but here's my package. I would love to continue
Yeah.
supporting you. A lot of people are going to drop off because a lot of those
Yeah.
people were just taking advantage of you. And as we move through these seasons of our lives, as we level up, sometimes the people that were taking advantage of you were your best friend or a family member. And that is gut wrenching
Yeah.
whenever you start to realize what their
I
relationship
know.
was really about. That doesn't
Yeah.
mean I disown you, I'm never going to talk to you again, but we have to create distance from those people to start opening up space for the new people that are supposed to be part of the next season of our life or the next piece of our journey. I don't know if I answered your question. I went down a few different rabbit holes
No, that's
there,
okay.
and I tend to do that. So if I ever do, just like wave me down and say, "Hey,
No,
I need to
no.
bring you back."
No, you did though. Because so I just to reiterate, like I was asking how you help leaders navigate, from going from potentially technical or more rigid sort of backgrounds to becoming more people focused, and you absolutely answered that, and then went down a different path that is weirdly timely as these things tend to happen. Because I'm going through that myself at the moment, internally. And so you also brought up blind spots, which is interesting to me. What uh hmm so I've been thinking about this since a little while ago when you were telling me how you grew into becoming a more basically a more compelling speaker and a stronger coach and so on, and how your skills compounded over time through being self-reflective and self-aware in that, identifying your weaknesses and so on, and going into finding resources that could help you overcome those and mitigate these challenges to just be better, and even more self-aware. I think at the end of the day, um, I'm my philosophy has always been, ever since I remember thinking, that if I'm not learning or growing in some way, shape, or form, I don't really see the point. Like, what is life without that? In my opinion, whenever I see complacency or the um just not laziness, but like, just, what is the word I'm looking for? A very specific word, I can't think of it. People who just stop caring, like, there's this, like, yeah, complacency around it. It's very bothersome to me. I just don't really I don't I'm like, so what what is the point? It's not that every single person has to find purpose and meaning in life. That's not what I'm going for, because that's another personality thing. Some people inherently have purpose because they provide, or they're taking care of someone else or a family member or anything like that. But when it when it feels like they're just kind of moving through life, just kind of moseying through life, then it just starts to feel like the why comes up. What's the point? And um, so what I'm getting at is, when you talk about blind spots, um, in your experience, do you find that, we put the right, you were also talking about, like, putting the right butts in the right seats, like making sure that personality aligns with the role when you're talking about building a company culture and building organizations and so on. This is critical for me. I understand this deeply. I also believe that there is a line, where, especially, for example, in the startup world, where work is work, and, like, you can't always have the right people in the right places. And if that person wants to work, claims that they want a job because they care and they believe in the company vision and so on, but the job isn't necessarily best suited for them, but that opportunity may or may not come along at some point, um is it up to the leader to sort of make room for that and to be malleable, or to know that, today there isn't another role, and, I need you in this, and if you can't do it, then we need to find someone else.
Whenever I think about the life cycle of a business, starting out the first year, 2 or 3 is brutal. I like to call it the swamp. You're stuck between, say, 10 to 60,000 a month in revenue. You're barely scraping by. You don't have enough money to hire the right talent, and then you look around and think, "Ugh, God, it's me again. I'm the only one that can do it." So you have to figure out, how do I get more volume and flow through the system? Leaning into paid ads, marketing, branding, because if you're under 100 grand a month, I can invariably guarantee that nobody knows who you are. So getting yourself out there, raising awareness, that has to be your top priority. Once you get more flow through the system, you start getting more cash in the door. It makes it easier for you to be increasingly selective about the talent that you hire. Before that, it's, hey, I can pay you this month this much, and I don't know if this is what you're great at, but I need you. And this is usually when we see a lot of entrepreneurs, they'll pull in friends and even family members because they trust them and they have a good work ethic, and they're just going to power through it. It doesn't mean they have all the skills necessary, but they're going to power through it. As the organization grows and scales, you start creating functional domains or silos. I've got marketing and sales. I've got operations and fulfillment. I've got back office administration. As scale occurs, so does complexity. With complexity, you have to hire the right talent that has a depth of knowledge in that domain. The bigger you get, the more intentional you have to be about marketing, about sales, client acquisition, about making sure that fulfillment of your service or product, that you have experts in it. So as you grow and scale each season of your business's life, you have to focus on what talent do I need during this season. Now, this is where a lot of business owners and leaders struggle because inevitably you have the career path and trajectory of the employee, you have the path and trajectory of the business. As long as there is alignment, great. It's all unicorns and rainbows. At some point, the business is going to start growing faster than the employee, or the employee starts outgrowing the business. And far too many business leaders and executives, they end up creating unnecessary conflict and frustration by trying to hold on. If an employee is outgrowing the company and then the senior executives like hold them down, it's not going to end up well. You're going to push away that talent. So as this divergence starts to occur, you have to be aware of what's going on, and you have to be intentional about organizational development, about building a pipeline of talent. Okay, if Jason outgrows the company and goes somewhere else, who is next in line? Is it somebody in the team, or do I have to have my feelers out there trying to find somebody else that has a similar skill set? And again, this is all about stacking skills. As a business leader, you don't even think about these things. As you're growing, you're like, I got to
Yeah.
get my next big
Yeah.
contract. I got to get my next customer and client. And that's why it's so challenging and why so many entrepreneurs and businesses fail within the first 5 years. And also, many of them, we're going to go back to the ego conversation. They think, I'm the entrepreneur. I'm the best at designing this
Yeah.
thing. Nobody else can do it. Well, I can assure you, there are people that are better than you. If you check your ego and you figure out how to bring in that high performing talent, all of a sudden you can then focus on this new thing. But that requires self awareness and usually a coach, guide, mentor, whether you pay them or not. Having
Yeah.
somebody in your corner that can shine a light on your blind spots, it is absolutely crucial. And as we are leveling up, we have to be more intentional about finding those people to keep in our corners because we've all heard it's lonely at the top. There's the pyramid. We've all seen that and heard that analogy. What I've come to realize is it can be lonely at the top. But as you are building, I wish I had my pen here with me. As you are building up to the top of your pyramid, you will eventually come to realize that you are part of a much larger pyramid. And so
Mhm.
now, when you ascend to the pinnacle of this one, you have to figure out how do I surround myself with these people that are part of the bigger
Yeah.
pyramid?
I
Not
can
an
picture
easy
it.
thing to do,
Yeah.
but figuring out how do I attend networking events that actually provide value and give
Yeah.
me an opportunity to build relationships because there's a lot all these networking communities that focus on I'm going to introduce you to 10,000 people, but you don't
Yeah.
build a relationship with any of them. So you have to
Yeah.
be intentional about this, and it is a very challenging journey. That's exactly why I decided to do it, because I love a good challenge.
Yeah, it speaks to me because first of all, I've always been of the so Ed Catmull used to be the president of Pixar like 20 years ago. I don't know if he still is, but I worked at Pixar 20 years ago. I was there during like right after college. I interned there and then I got a job for like 2.5 years. His whole philosophy was that like he was always categorized and labeled as one of the best managers of his time because he always hired people, in his words, that were better at than him. He always hired people who were stronger at doing the things so that he could run the company, so he could manage the company and then put his trust in the people that were doing the things that needed to be done operationally and so on. And I always believed in that. That resonated with me even as a young person. I was like, that makes so much sense because I've never been. While I was, I like to get in the weeds and do production art when I was younger and like make pretty things and all that, and not be bothered by anybody and just go sit in the corner and do my thing. Um, I also didn't like to micromanage, actually, for the same reasons, because I was like, I want to go do my thing and you go do your thing. And then we'll meet, back here and whatever, and see how awesome we each, how well we did our own things. And then collaborate like that. And you can't really delegate properly if people aren't better than you. Like, because then you're going to be micromanaging. You're going to be like, well, did you do this? Did you do that? There's going to be all these questions and things that fall through the cracks and so on. So yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Ego is another one, man. Jesus. In the it's like this, I mean, it comes up all the time, but I always define ego as like it's our opinion of how we believe the world should be, right? And so whenever something's like not going our way, that's when our ego kicks in. It's our protector. It's the thing that makes our us angry or whatever, because it's the only thing we can control. And anything beyond that is terrifying, and I can't control it. I don't know what's going to happen, so I'm not even going to try. And so in the like in the M&A space, this, in the M&A space, I always say everybody thinks they're Jesus Christ, because they're like, no, my way is going to be better than everyone else's way. Like, I'm going to do it a way, just look at the stats. I mean, that much data, 100 years of data can't be wrong. And it's always amazing to me that every next person in line thinks they're somehow going to do it better than the last person, and just refuse to listen to outside input until it's too late and there's a fire around them and they have to bring you in, or they have to bring me in, or whoever.
I was at an annual Vistage summit this week, actually, and I've also been a part of XPS Exchange and having a lot of conversations in the M&A space. I'm so fortunate in that my career, I spent a lot of it in oil and gas. I've been a part of 48 acquisitions and integrations over the years, done 2 IPOs. And so I've seen what to do and what not to do. I've seen more of what not to do. And that's where you learn the lessons. But a lot of what I do now is post acquisition or post transaction integration work. And then also pre transaction, helping entrepreneurs build their business in a way to increase the multiple. And I love having those conversations, but I want to peel back the onion a little bit as far as this mindset of nobody can do it the way I can. And one of the largest acquisitions and integrations that I've ever been a part of, there was a lot of headbutting that was going on at the senior leadership level. We acquired a company, been around for 3 decades. They'd done this, 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 this. They had ISO certifications, all the things. And the other executives in the acquiring side didn't agree. Well, I don't want to do it this way. I don't want to do it this way. And I had to sit back and watch and observe, and I tried to mediate the best I could, but there was so much headbutting going on where the acquired company said, we've tried it this way. It doesn't work because of this, this, and this. And the other executives like, well, we're still going to try it. And it's just pure ego. And I heard a stat somewhere, I'm sure it's out on the internet and I'm probably going to butcher it, but anywhere from 80%, 80 to 90% of acquisition integrations fail to meet the original and intended objective of the acquisition. That is a staggeringly high number. And we can contribute it to ego because there's egos all the way down. You've got managers at every single level, and they're just constantly butting heads. We've always done it this way. Okay, well, you're going to do it this way now. And this is why it's so important to build people skills, but also build skills around understanding data, logic, process. And when you're able to marry those things together, understand the business process and the data, and effectively communicate it with all parties involved and mediate those conversations, you can successfully integrate a company. But there's so many layers, so many people involved that it becomes really challenging. So the whole M&A space, I actually love having conversations about it because I've done so many of them. But it's quite interesting to see. And if you look at private equity and these companies that are going in and building them up, they're so far detached that most of the due diligence is strictly about the financials. That's it. Financials, market share, brand recognition. They put this much energy and effort into understanding the cultures of both organizations, and even less energy and effort in trying to figure out how do we assimilate these cultures across these organizations. And it's unfortunate, but it also means there's a lot of opportunity for us to be able to help.
Yeah, exactly. That's actually where you and I connected when we first met. It was through that entire conversation. It was my model of culture branding where I'm connecting the you talked about brand recognition. I'm connecting the message to the culture, making sure that what people say actually reflects what they do, and that their values are reflected in their branding. So ultimately, to your point, and again, this is where you and I connected, whether it's pre or post transaction. Pre is the place you want to be. That's ideal. But post is your, you're basically putting out fires. But in the pre, like building them up for a substantial exit. My whole thing is like build you up so that you don't have to go to market. The market is knocking down your door. They're just bidding on you. And then I've heard so many stories, and you may have these stories actually. I'd love to hear one if you do, where they're knocking on their door, and then guess what? That company now goes, "Oh, we're not selling." That's my favorite one. Like, we're not interested anymore. Now we're buying. So
Yeah, you would actually be surprised to know how many whenever you start thinking about the M&A space and companies that are interested in acquiring others, they will go out and say, "Hey, we're looking at these 20 companies." And then we narrow it down to say 5, and then 4 and 3. And so you start off with this massive pool, and then you create this alignment, and then all of a sudden your top 2 companies that you're looking at acquiring, because they started putting more energy and effort and focus on increasing their multiple by putting the right people, processes, and technologies in place, all of a sudden, we're on this incredible trajectory. No, I don't think I want to sell. I think I want to go snatch somebody else up now that I see what's going on and see how much better we have actually made our organization. And somebody on, I think it was LinkedIn, responded to one of my posts just asking, why would you want to put so much energy and effort pre-transaction? And the reality is, all of the steps that you take to improve your business, to increase the likelihood of a higher multiple on exit, actually make the business more
yeah,
profitable.
that's
They
right.
make it more scalable. And
Yeah,
once you start putting those things in place, you then have the luxury of deciding, do I want to exit? Do I want to keep growing this thing? Do I want
yeah,
to build a leadership team so that I can just kind of sit back and eventually let it run on its own and just have mailbox money? Like, you have
yeah.
optionality, but you've got to build the business in the right way so that you can have that optionality.
Yeah, that's right. Isn't that so cool? I always say, I'm always like, just build as if you're going to exit, even if you're not going to.
Hmm.
Like, if it's not
Yeah.
even on your mind, just do
Yep.
it as if you will. Like, the results, you'll be amazed at the results.
Well, and I suspect most of these entrepreneurs say, "Well, that's going to cost money. I'm going to
Yeah,
have to hire consultants, and do I get the right people?" And it's an investment. It's not a cost. It's only a cost if you bring in the wrong consultants, and trust me, there are plenty of wrong consultants out there. But if you do your due diligence and you know that this person has a track record, or this team of consultants have a track record of success, then it is an investment. But when you're a business owner and you're kind of on the line, like, oh, is this the right thing? You have to have enough confidence that you're working with the right people. And I'm going to tie this all back into marketing, branding, awareness, content creation, and something that I again, it was an unintended consequence, but having my podcast for the past 4.5 years talking about leadership in business, anytime you Google Sean Barnes, you're going to find years of content of me talking on leadership in business. And we're continuing to even double down, just trying to get even more and more out there. And I also appreciate if you go to the YouTube channel, sort by oldest, and see my oldest
Yeah.
videos, dude, like it is brutal how horrible they were. To this day, there's like 8 views, and like 6 of them are my mom watching it over and over just to support. But I mean, and here's the thing, I leave all of those up because anybody that's curious, anybody that doubts the things
Yeah.
that I'm saying, go look at the videos. And I'm hoping that in me documenting my journey, that I can inspire and influence others, and then also have all years of content that work beautifully from a lead nurture perspective to help build brand recognition and authority, and by consequence, trust.
Yeah, that's really good input. And I really appreciate that you keep the originals so that people can see that you've lived it. You've lived what you're preaching, which is phenomenal in being genuine and transparent. So so finally, looking ahead in this crazy economy, the crazy workspace, the broken employee employer relationship, and so on, how do you envision leadership development evolving to meet these crazy tumultuous times and more complex organizations, organizational environments, remote work, hybrid work, international, offshore, like all these things? How do you see leadership development evolving?
I still geek out on technology. And so if you watch everything that is unfolding with AI and robotics over the next decade, it is going to be very challenging in the labor market. I think a lot of executives might have this mindset of, oh, AI is never going to replace me. But there's already data, studies, articles coming out where mid level employees are saying they trust ChatGPT's guidance on career progression more than their managers. That's a scary thought. And so these senior executives are like, "Oh, cool. We want to use AI." I don't think many of them truly understand the trajectory that we are going on. Now, we are going to continue moving to an increasingly virtual world. We're going to continue leveraging AI. There's a lot that we have to do around data integrity and cleaning that information up to make sure that the AI is actually doing what we intend it to do. But let's set that aside for a minute. We are continuing to move into this virtual world, but we are still human. We still crave human interaction. Yes, the pandemic sent everybody home, and we all started to get very comfortable behind a camera and computer screen. There is no replacement for in person human connection. And so, what I implore people to do is to continue meeting with people, networking in person as long as possible. I work with a lot of executives, and many of them actually have me work with their kids that are coming out of college because they have no social skills. They've spent their entire life doing this thing right here, and you sit down in front of them, they can't make eye contact, they're fumbling their words, they can't like, they're pretty good at whatever their skill is, but they can't communicate. And it doesn't matter if you're a level 10 of 10 engineer, if you communicate at a 2 or 3, nobody's ever going to know. So this is why, me personally, we're leaning so heavily into holding on to our human skills, the ability to have a conversation with people, walk into any room and establish trust instantly, have a rapport with people. So I'm encouraging as many leaders and as many people as possible to lean into building those skills, because the stronger you are in that arena, that is going to be your differentiator, and it's going to allow you to hold out as long as possible. There is no stopping the trajectory of the world going increasingly virtual, but we are still humans. So we have to lean into that developing people skills, communication skills, understanding behaviors, how to inspire and influence. These are what most organizations call soft skills. They're crucial skills. They're like superpowers this day and age. So this is where people have to focus.
If you had to give our audience something they can sort of take away quickly, they can implement quickly for those who are interested in developing their social skills a little bit more and being more in tune with humanity, what would you tell them?
Don't be afraid to go to networking events. As an introvert, that scared the hell out of me. Walking into a room full of strangers, and look, I'm going to be straight up with you. I still, if I walk into a room full of strangers and I know nobody, it's still tough for me. I still struggle. So deep down at my core, that is who I am. But I have built and developed skills, kind of like building muscles. The more I do it, the easier it is for me to go in and just kind of start to strike up a conversation with somebody. Start going to networking events. And there's like Meetup, and there's all sorts of websites that have in-person meeting events. Set a goal for yourself. I'm going to go to this networking event. It's free, or it's $10 for a ticket. Go in and say, I'm going to walk away with 5 business cards. That's it. Walk away with 5 business cards, and it's going to force you. It's going to suck. It is going to be so horrible. And for the extroverts, you're actually probably going to like it. And it's an extra fun challenge to walk away with 5 business cards. But you have to be intentional about holding on to building and holding on to those relationships. And then also find out what your blind spots are. This is going to be a tough conversation with yourself. You sit on the edge of your bed or meditate and ask yourself, what are my blind spots? And the irony is we can't see them because they are our blind spots. But if you go to somebody that you trust, that you respect and admire, a mentor, friend, family member, colleague, doesn't matter. Go to somebody and say, I'm going to be real and raw with you. I want you to tell me what my blind spots are. That's a tough conversation to have. And they might tell you something. This is where it gets even more tricky. They might tell you something that you don't want to hear. That's tough. But that is the best way to raise awareness of your blind spots. But don't live your life behind this little screen. That's it.
Sean, if you already touched on this earlier, if our listeners want to reach out to you, if they want to find you, if they want a coach to be better at being human, where can they find you the most easily?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn, just Sean Barnes, or you can go to my website, seanbarnes.com. It's sean.barnes is my email address, but website is just seanbarnes.com. That's probably going to be the best way.
Fantastic, brother. Thank you so much for being here. It was such a pleasure, honestly. And you and I need to keep talking.
We do. We absolutely do, my friend.
Cool. Thanks, man. All the best to you.